Welcome to my first drive video on BMW's brand new X3 M50. It's big, it's ugly, it's expensive, but it's annoyingly really good. This flagship M50 has a base price of £68,500 here in the UK, except this particular press car has a lot of options and packages ticked, bringing its on-the-road retail price up to £79,500. Back in 2018, BMW launched the X3 M40i, which was the predecessor to this model, and that retailed at £50,500, meaning this new model is £18,000 more expensive. I put that figure into an inflation calculator online to see what that original 2018 X3 M40i would cost brand new today. And I was really surprised because it told me £71,200, which would make it almost £3,000 more than this new model. Now, although I'm a big fan of this optional fire red paintwork, especially when this was clean about a week ago, in terms of the rest of the aesthetics and styling on this car, it really doesn't do it for me. Can you believe that these are 21-inch wheels? They look way too small, and I think part of the reason they look so small is because they're black. These wheels are also available in bi-colour, meaning black and silver, and actually they cost a little bit less, and in my opinion at least, make this car look so much better. There's just too much of a contrast going on, and these wheels just disappear into these arches. They look more like 18-inch than 21-inch, but that also gives you an idea of how big this car is. It's growing in length and width, although it is a little bit lower. I'm really struggling with BMW's current design language. I'm not a fan of these massive grills that seem to have an awful lot of cheap plastic inside them. Can you imagine what that's all going to look like in 2 or 3 years? Putting an illumination around the outside of it doesn't somehow make it any better. I think the actual headlight design is really pretty, but the overall front bumper design just doesn't do it for me. That is probably my favourite angle of the new X3, although I still don't think it's a pretty angle. We have 4 exhaust pipes in line with the rest of the BMW M-Lite range, which I think is a little bit overkill, but at least this car has a 6-cylinder engine, which we'll talk about in a second. If we open this boot using the button down here or the button on this oversized and ugly key, we'll find a very useful and practical 570 litres of space, and that doesn't include this underfloor boot storage, and obviously that doesn't include when you fold that rear bench flat. It's also split into 40, 20, 40, making it very handy and practical. Without question, the best thing about this X3 M50 is the fact that it has the iconic B58 engine underneath the bonnet. This 3-litre inline-6 turbocharged engine is paired up to a 48-volt mild hybrid system. It has a maximum total output of 398 horsepower and 580 newton meters of torque. That power and torque runs through a ZF 8-speed automatic gearbox and is fed to the ground via BMW's xDrive system. They claim it will do the 0 to 62 sprint in just 4.6 seconds, which means it's 0.2 of a second quicker than the older X3 M40i. And that's impressive when you bear in mind that this weighs 2,055 kilos. It will also do a claimed 35.8 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle with these larger optional 21-inch wheels. Jumping inside, and let's start with the positives. First one being driving position and overall ergonomics. Absolutely spot on. This car fits me like a glove. The next one are these seats. Very adjustable, very comfortable, and supportive enough. In line with that large boot, the rest of the interior also feels big, spacious, and airy, especially if you have this big, large panoramic roof. But it's not a sunroof. It doesn't open. In terms of tech and infotainment, because this X3 is a brand new model, it has the very latest operating system 9, which is packed full of features, works extremely well and pairs up instantly to my Android Auto. Now let's get onto some of the negatives. The first thing I noticed when I jumped in here was similar to when I jumped into the current 5 Series and 7 Series for the first time. And that is how low rent some of the plastics and fit and finish is. It's not horrendous, but there are some cheaper plastics hidden away, which is nothing new. But there are also some cheaper plastics that are staring you in the face. And the first one that really upsets me and is almost bad enough to put me off the car entirely is this whole section up here in the door card. The door handles, for starters, are plastic. And in front of those, I'm not even sure how to describe it. It's a big, nasty piece of plastic that seems to have buttons integrated into it. The plastic itself looks like it's been taken off a wheel arch of a 2006 Mini Cooper. I'm not sure what I think about this material on the door cards and on the dashboard. One hand, I think it's quite cool and reminds me of the very latest Mini interiors. On the other hand, I don't think it's really premium enough to be in BMW's latest X3, especially an X3 costing 80-odd thousand pounds. But similar to the glass sunroof, it does lighten up the interior a little bit. And my last moaning complaint is all of this unnecessary ambient lighting. I think it makes the interior look very tacky. When you switch between the drive mode, so let's go into sport, where everything goes red, maybe that appeals to some people. To me, it's a little bit of a gimmick, as are all of these other modes. Digital art, I mean, come on, it's a car. First things first, let's test out this car's claimed acceleration figures. BMW say it would do the 0 to 62 sprint in just 4.6 seconds. Conditions outside are close to perfect. My Racebox Mini is ready to go. I'm in sports automatic and I'm in sports traction. The reason I haven't switched it entirely off is because I can't get launch control to activate when everything is switched off. My left foot is hard down on the brake, right foot on the accelerator, launch control active. Here we go. Oh my goodness. That is so quick off the line. 3.98 seconds to 60 miles an hour. That is absolutely nuts in your M Light. And that backs up my theory, which we are going to get onto a little bit later, that this car feels like it has way more than 398 horsepower. I'm not going to beat around the bush. The second you pull away in this car and you start driving it, all of that negativity around the price, the fit and finish, the styling, well, it all goes out the window because it drives exceptionally well. But before we get onto the spirited driving, I've knocked it back into default comfort, if you like. I think they call it personal in this. Those modes really confuse me, but I've set it up to be as laid back as possible. And I tell you what, as a normal car, as an X3, as something that's going to potentially transport your family around, it's really, really good. We've talked about the practical side of it. We've talked about these seats being exceptionally comfortable and this driving position being really, really good. It's a nice commanding driving position. I've talked about that a lot over the years on my channel, and although I'm not the biggest SUV fan, there's no getting away from the fact that when you're sitting, let's say 6 to 8 inches higher than you would be in a saloon or a touring, well, you just get a much better view of the road ahead. Whether you're on a or B road like this, you can see over the hedgerows, or whether you're on a busy motorway, you can usually see 3, 4, 5 cars in front of you, instead of if you're in a lower car or a sports car and you can only see the immediate car in front of you, and that makes it in turn a little bit safer. I could see this cyclist, for instance, from miles back there because his jacket was above the hedgerow for me. Its ride quality is potentially its weakest point when you're talking about it as a daily tool. It's a little bit stiff. Nothing like BMW's XM, which is bone shattering on a UK road, but you are aware of this car maybe being set up more towards the sporty end than the comfortable end. As with so many BMWs over the past 10 years that have the wonderful B58 under their bonnet, it does tend to be the party piece of the package, and this car is no different. BMW have tuned and fettled with that motor over the years to what it is today, and as we talked about when we had the bonnet open, well, this one is paired up to a 48-volt mild hybrid system that does help you with slower speed maneuvers, and it also does essentially torque fill when you're pushing on. In fact, if you pull this left paddle, you get a boost function for 10 seconds, which I think essentially gives you everything, sharpens up the throttle, gives you all of that power available, including any of that electrical energy. But when you're cruising around, it's just such a magic combination. That B58, the ZF 8-speed automatic gearbox, BMW's calibration between them, it all works so well. The B58 has a lovely slug of low down torque, so you never feel like you're working it particularly hard when you're cruising around. But obviously when you do start pushing it, it rewards you at the top end as well. In many ways, I think the single turbo B58 is a better all-round engine than the full M version, the S58, which is in cars like the M2, the M3 and the M4. That's a great engine when you're really up it, but it lacks low down torque that this one has. Also, the B58 undoubtedly sounds better than the twin turbo S58, to my ears at least. Anyway, on longer runs, I've seen almost 40 miles to the gallon, which is exceptional when you think about the performance that's on offer and the practicality and shape of this car. It just shouldn't be possible, but it is, and that's another reason that I love the wonderful B58. Right, let's push on a little bit. We'll go down here to my modes and we'll hit sport, which is configured to my settings. So whether that is drivetrain, driving dynamics, steering or damping, I've set all of those independently to my favorite settings. A bit like an M1 button, but you do have to use that button and the screen to activate it. We'll pull this to go into sports automatic, pull a paddle to give us manual, and yeah, let's see what this car's like. Well, we already know that it's exceptionally fast. 4 seconds to 60 miles an hour for something that's over 2 tons and shaped like a house. Well, it's exceptional. But this car is more than just a straight line rocket ship. Right, there's a nice twisty section of road coming up, which is really more of an M2 style road, not an X3 road, but the way this handles, it's just wonderful. It really is. That commanding driving position comes in handy because I can see so much further than if I was in an M2, M3 or M4. Gearbox is mighty. It even sounds good, and I know that a lot of that is probably piped through the cabin, but it's not an offensive sound. It's so capable. A pre-facelift X3M competition wouldn't see which way this car went down a typical British A or B road like this. The way the suspension and chassis is set up is genuinely incredible. That slightly stiff ride that we talked about when everything is knocked back suddenly makes so much sense the second you start to push on and lean on it. It just deals with everything so well. It never seems to get unsettled, and I've pushed it pretty hard off camera in all weather conditions over the past week, and every time it has really, really impressed me. I guess it's time for me to give you a conclusion. Well, as you've seen, I started off this video in a relatively negative mindset because I personally can't get my head around the looks of this car. I'm sure, as I said, with the other optional bi-colour wheels, that's going to help in terms of proportion and hopefully make this car look a little bit better. I think the solid black wheels, the black sidewall tyres on the fire red paintwork's just too much of a contrast. Then when you jump inside and some of the cheaper plastics that you're looking at all the time when you're driving this car, especially these ones here around the door handles, just unacceptable in a car costing this kind of money. But I think the main point is when you get behind the wheel, whether you're cruising around with the family on board or whether you've woken up especially early on a Sunday morning, taking it down to one of your favourite roads like this, and you put your foot down, you just can't believe what it's capable of. It really is a proper Jekyll and Hyde vehicle, and suddenly that £70,000 all starts to make an awful lot of sense because its performance, its ability is unreal. And if you want a car that is very, very capable, relatively frugal at the same time, and very, very practical, then the X3 M50 must be high up your list. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for more content coming very soon. Thanks for watching. As always, please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you at another one very soon. Cheers.